Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we had started the 6th chapter. And before I proceed, let me start the recording. So before we proceed with the 6th chapter, I'd just like to add a cheerful note on suffering. This is with regard to the enormous amount of distress and suffering that's going on in the world, especially in India now. And what is the role, if any, of spirituality or philosophy in all of this? People ask that is this the time for philosophy or spirituality? When people they need medical treatment, or they're gasping for breath. So yes and no. It is true that Swami Vivekananda himself said it is an insult to a starving man to teach him metaphysics. So you have to give immediate relief to a person who is suffering. But ultimately, spirituality is the ultimate antidote to suffering. It is not that the great spiritual teachers, masters, were heartless. Rather, they felt much more keenly than all of us. And that's why they searched for a real solution to suffering, something that would be profound, deep, and lasting. People ask me that, so do you see that many people have become interested in spirituality in this time of suffering? And the answer to that is a little difficult. Yes, they have, but the interest is of two kinds. And that tells you something about the nature of religion and spirituality. The interest is of two kinds. One kind, most people I suspect, is that we are now anxious and scared and unhappy. And if by the grace of God, things would go back to the way they were, become normal, we can carry on with our lives, we want to return to that. So most people would be happy with that. And there is another group who would think deeper, that what is meant by this suffering. Going back to normal is not going back to the normal itself was not normal. It was always, there is the root of suffering is always there. The great spiritual teachers, masters like the Buddha, they noted that. They feel more deeply, they feel the suffering of all, even in times of what we would call normal times. They know that normal times, so-called normal times, are not normal times. All of normal human life is also infected with unhappiness, suffering, and that's why they looked for a solution to that, to any deep or lasting solution. And the solution they found, Buddha and others also, was spirituality. So some of the people who become interested in spirituality during this time, they have this deeper interest which will last. Even things will get back to normal, some sort of normal, but after this also they will retain their interest. The larger number of people who have become interested in religion and spirituality will unfortunately probably lose that interest as quickly as they have got it. It's that's the way it is. The literature goes to show that in times of pandemics, like mass suffering, there is an increased interest in religion, but that goes away once the cause of that suffering diminishes. So that's the way it is. Long before the Buddha, there was Kapila. Swami Vivekananda calls Kapila the first philosopher of the human race. The sage Kapila, the originator of Sankhya philosophy. In fact, Bhagavan Buddha himself says that among the things that he learned from his teachers on his way to enlightenment, on his journey, in his spiritual journey, his account of what he learned from teachers like Alara Kalama and Uddalaka Ramaputta, there is some kind of proto-Sankhya, proto-yoga there, which later he incorporated in his own teachings. The original teachings of the Sankhya philosophers are lost to us. The most ancient text that we can get our hands on is a book called the Sankhya Karika. The Sankhya Sutras, we have it, but that's a later reconstruction. Kapila's original Sankhya Sutras, it's doubtful whether they are there. So the Sankhya Karika, that text is nowadays, if you want to study Sankhya philosophy, the most ancient reliable text you could get your hands on would probably be the Sankhya Karika. At least that's how it is introduced. Sankhya system is introduced to people who study Indian philosophy. So in the Sankhya Karika, there's a point to all this, what I'm leading up to. In the Sankhya Karika, the first verse of this very ancient text, how ancient, I'll tell you. There is a Chinese translation of the Sankhya Karika available, which is 1500 years old, 15 or 1600 years old. So it was already popular. It was popularized through Buddhism. And it was popularized through Tibet, China, and other places. So multiple translations are available. So in this Sankhya Karika, the author, Ishwar Krishna, he writes these verses on Sankhya philosophy. The first verse is important for us. It gives us an argument for spirituality. What is spirituality? Why do we need it in relation to suffering? So I'll read out the first verse today. Before we go into, we'll go get back to the Gita, but this is today's look at the foundations of spiritual search. Why at all are we engaged in it? What is this project that we are engaged in? What are we trying to do? So that, sort of re-examining the basis of our search from the perspective of suffering. So here it is. This is, I'm reading out from Sankhya Karika, the first verse, Ishwara Krishna. There he says, Dukkhatraya abhighatad jigyasa tad apaghata ke hetau drishte sa partha chet na ekanta atyanto abhavat. Assaulted by the threefold sorrow, there arises within us an inquiry about the means of overcoming sorrow. If you object that there are available means, worldly means of overcoming sorrow, the answer is, so meaning that you don't need a spiritual solution. So the answer is no, because these worldly means lack certainty and finality. Okay, sort of self-explanatory, but we'll take a look at it. He says that there is suffering in this world, and he divides it into three kinds of suffering: the adhyatmika, adhibhautika, and adhidaivika. So adhyatmika means the suffering that comes from one's own body and mind. Notice that ultimately all suffering must come to the mind. If I don't feel that suffering, if I am in deep sleep or in coma or something like that, then I won't feel the suffering. But so ultimately, to feel suffering, it must all come to my mind. But the causes of some kind of suffering may be external. The causes of some kind of suffering may be in the body, and the causes of some kind of suffering may be in the mind itself. So it is logical to make a distinction of different kinds of suffering because their roots may lie in different places. Now, adhyatmika means the suffering caused by my body-mind. So disease in the body, that is a prime source of suffering. And it could be disease in the mind, the mental illness. These are sources of suffering. Then adhibhautika means the suffering caused by other beings. So in the old commentaries, they are interesting. Caused by lions and tigers and mosquitoes. So you can imagine being in India, these would be serious problems, lions and tigers and mosquitoes. None of them are around here, but you can imagine there's some suffering caused by other beings, maybe the annoying neighbor or something like that. Right now, my neighbor here has started learning music, so I can understand the suffering caused by by other beings, other living beings. And then there's suffering caused by natural causes. So an earthquake, or like a lot of heat or a lot of cold, tremendous cold. I sort of suspect something like the COVID, the pandemic. In those days, in ancient times, they would have seen it as a kind of natural suffering. Nowadays we know it is caused by a living being, a virus, so we would probably say it is caused by another living being. I guess the ancients would have thought that it is natural suffering, a natural disaster. And it is true, a virus, a pandemic is somewhere on the margins between caused by other living being and caused by, like a natural disaster. So assaulted by these three kinds of suffering, we seek for a solution to this suffering. Jigyasa, an inquiry arises among us. How do we overcome suffering? And then he himself, the author, raises this objection, possible objection, that there are solutions. Look around you. And the commentators on these verses give nice solutions. Like if you're feeling sick, go to the pharmacy, get medicine. You're feeling, so that's a physical illness. You get medicine for that. Get vaccinated. If you're feeling bored, you can watch TV. If there are problems caused by other people, there are courts and police and all to take care of you. And there are natural disasters, then it says that you can go take refuge in shelters, and you can consult astrologers and offer sacrifices to the gods and so whatnot. So there are solutions. There's a whole range of solutions available to you. And one of the commentators says, he quotes an old saying, that if honey is available in your backyard, why journey to the mountain to collect the wild honey from the honey bees or something. So which means if the solution is available at hand, why not use this solution? And then he gives the answer, his reply to that, why all these solutions don't work. And this is really important. This is an argument for spirituality, and one should consider it. He says, atyanta ekanta bhavat. There is no certainty about these solutions. They may work, they may not work. And even if they do work, there is no finality about them. The same problem may arise or another problem will arise. See, here it is interesting to note that even religion, the common mass religion, falls among these solutions. If you see the distressing visuals of people weeping, and I saw on the video, so many people are actually praying for their near and dear ones and to get some relief. And notice, in all that prayer, some of it works, some of it does not work. I'm not saying that prayer does not work. It does work, but one thing I could never understand was that even when prayer does work, it's not final. For no case ever in history has anybody escaped death by praying to God, save me from death. No, physical death is inevitable and inescapable. Swami Vivekananda was very blunt on that point. He said, kings die and paupers die, the learned die and the ignorant die, saints die and sinners die. Everyone dies. Death comes for everybody. If you pray, it might work for a moment. At this point, death may pass over me or my near and dear ones, but it will come back for everybody. Avatars, enlightened persons, they died. Physical death comes for everybody. So it's not, it's even religion, praying to God. I never quite understood how it is a solution. It can be a temporary solution. It's not a final solution at all. And it's not a certain solution. Ekanta means absolutely certain result. So many people are praying. Whether it's a worldly solution like medicine and medical care, or religious solution like praying to God, so many people are praying. Some of them get answered, some of them it works for some, and some it does not work. There's no certainty that it will work. These are hard truths, and one must consider this. Then only this question about spirituality arises. Is there a real solution to all of this? An ultimate, lasting, profound solution, not just patchwork. Like some problem is there, just patch it up, it will come back again in a worse form, but somehow you carry on. No, so there has to be this real, deep, permanent solution to all of these problems. Is it possible? If you believe it is possible, the claim is that it is possible, and one must believe in this. I'll tell you why. I heard this sadhu, very touching. Before starting his talk, it was in Hindi. Before starting his talk, he says, I will ask you all a question. Ask yourselves, do you really believe that spirituality is possible? Do you believe there are spiritual people today? Do you believe that God can be experienced? Do you believe that one can be holy in this life, overcome suffering in this life? Are there such people? Are there such experiences? And then he says, the question is subtle. He says that if you don't believe this, I don't believe there's any genuinely spiritual person. If there's no other genuinely spiritual person, the implied meaning, the subconscious meaning of this kind of thinking is to my own mind. Look, this is no skin of the back of spiritual people who do exist. It's nothing to them. We are the losers if we don't believe in that. How we are the losers, that Swami pointed out. The moment if I don't believe that spirituality is possible, I don't believe that really holy people exist, I don't believe that anybody has actually seen God, then the only loser, I am the loser. How? The subtle message goes to my subconscious. If there is really no spiritual person, how can I expect to be spiritual? If there's nobody spiritual in the world, there's no question of I becoming spiritual. If nobody has really seen God in this world right now, then what are the chances that I'll be the one who's going to see God? You see, it's the most fundamental kind of self-sabotaging. It cripples our spirituality, and it is the condition of large numbers of people. He put it in Hindi. The Swami was giving a talk, he put it in Hindi. He said, कोई अवलंबन नहीं रह जाता है, कोई आधार नहीं रह जाता है. There is no foundation left for you. You have ruined yourself if you think in this way. So the fact is, spirituality is possible. There are holy people, there are enlightened people even living today. And it is therefore possible for all of us. That is the beginning. Heinrich Zimmer, the Indologist, he said the philosophies of India, they seem to talk about suffering, but he says they are profoundly optimistic. They are not pessimistic, because they believe that a real solution is at hand, that one can actually overcome suffering. So, I just read out one sentence at the beginning. So this book is the Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna, pretty old, pretty ancient. The Sankhya system itself is older than Buddha. I don't know if this book is older than, but this book is probably post-Buddhistic. And then there's a commentary, beautiful commentary written by Vachaspati Mishra. This commentary is called Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi, the moonlight of the essential truths of the Sankhya system. So the commentary, the first sentence of the commentary, I'll just read out to you and see how these ancients thought about the very foundation of spiritual life and suffering. So he says, in commenting on these words, Evam hi shastra vishaya na jigyasya. So suppose you say that there's no need of inquiring into spirituality. Why? Yadi dukkham nama jagati nasyat. If there was no such thing in called like sorrow in this world, suppose there's no sorrow in this world, then there would be no question of inquiring into spirituality. Sadva na jihasitam. But suppose there is sorrow and there is no desire to get rid of sorrow. Even then there would be no inquiry into spiritual life. Look at the logical steps. No sorrow, no importance of spirituality. There is sorrow, but no effort to get rid of it. Again, no interest in spirituality. Jihasitam va ashakyam samuchedam. You desire to get rid of sorrow, but it's not possible. Then also there'll be no interest in spirituality. Ashakya samuchedata cha dvidha. Why would it be impossible to get rid of suffering? He says there might be two reasons why it's impossible to get rid of suffering. Dukkhasya nityatvat. Maybe suffering is a permanent condition of life. Who knows? Many people believe that. This is what we have got. You make the best of it. What, make hay while sun shines? Something like that, yes. So, YOLO, you live only once. YOLO. So, suffering is permanent, is a given. There's nothing you can do about it. That's one objection to spirituality. Taducheda upaya parigyanadva. And here is the crux. Or maybe we just don't know the way to do it. There is a way to come out of suffering. We don't know the way. Then he goes on to say, Shakya samuchedatve apicha shastra vishayasya jnanasya upaya jnanasya anupayatvat. So he says, suppose it is possible to overcome suffering, but spirituality is not the way. The spirituality taught by your scriptures, your text, that's not the way to overcome suffering. Sukarasya anya upayasya, sukarasya upayantarasya sadbhavat. Much easier and better ways of overcoming suffering are present. Which are the worldly ways of overcoming suffering? You take a pill, watch movies, and you take all the worldly ways of dealing with suffering, or even the conventionally religious ways of dealing with suffering. I pray, I believe in God, God's going to protect me, and I carry on with my usual life. All of these are, this is the first sentence, this is the opening theme. These are objections against spirituality. That what trips us over in our search, in our spiritual search, what stops us. And this is very profound. I mean, in the sense that that's why large numbers of people in the world today express no interest in spirituality, or they stop short of committing to any kind of spiritual life. The Buddha, so his whole teaching begins with the fact that there is suffering. And I mentioned somewhere, one of the Tibetan philosophers, Tsongkhapa, great Tibetan master, he classifies suffering in this way, and he says that, yeah, there are these evident sources of suffering: janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi, birth and death and disease and old age. So these are sources of suffering. And then he says you can collapse them all together into two kinds. One is contact with what you don't want, and the other one is separation from what you want. So the contact with the undesired, COVID, I don't want that contact, but that's suffering. Or loss of somebody or something which you value, that is suffering. Then he goes on to further to say that all of that also can be collapsed into one cause of suffering. And he says that is change. Continuous change. Everything is in flux, and that leads to suffering. Why would change be suffering? This is a subtle point. Change is suffering because our desired setup, this is the amount of money I want, this is the kind of health I want, these are the people around me I want, these are the place, this is the place I want to stay, I set up my physical, financial, relationships, health, all of that. These are the factors, these are the variables, and I want them all at this level. So that level, even if it's possible to attain it, because everything is subject to change, the moment you attain it, next moment it will change. And what it will change into will not be satisfactory. Therefore, change always leads to dissatisfaction. And then he makes an important point, that Tsongkhapa. He says even change is not the cause of suffering. Notice how he is narrowing down, he's focusing, digging deep into this concept. First of all, the most obvious sources of suffering: sickness, old age, and death. Then he narrows it down to contact with unpleasant and dissociation with what is pleasant. Then he narrows it down further to change. And then finally he says, even change is not the cause of suffering. What is the cause of suffering? He says ignorance. Our ignorance of the real nature of things, what we are and what this world is. Because notice, Buddha also remained in the midst of change. Buddha also faced old age and disease and death. The Buddha also came into contact with what was pleasant and came into contact with what was unpleasant and lost contact with what was pleasant. And the Buddha also suffered change, was in the middle of change. And yet, in the middle of all the causes of suffering, the Buddha had no suffering. He claimed to have overcome suffering. So, what is it that ultimately causes suffering? Ignorance. Ignorance, of course, exactly how ignorance about what and what is the solution, little difference is there in the different philosophies. But ignorance is ultimately, it is to blame. Our lack of understanding about what we are and what this world is. I've shared with you that interesting story about the Buddha when a monk came and asked him that, a Buddhist monk, that master, you had told us that your teaching is to go take us beyond suffering. And suffering is due to old age and disease and death. But notice, we monks are also getting old and we are getting diseased and we are dying. So how have we gone beyond suffering? The other people who are not Buddhists, they are getting old, they have disease and they have death. And we, your followers, loyal followers, we are also getting old, we also fall sick, and we are also suffering. So we have not gone beyond suffering. You said you would take it. So it's a consumer complaint. Then the Buddha said that the nature of suffering is like these two arrows, like a man hit by one arrow. Imagine the pain and shock, and immediately hit by a second arrow. Imagine the terrible trauma and the shock of being hit by a second arrow immediately. The first arrow is what the world throws at us: old age, disease, death. That's the first arrow, and it does cause suffering. The second arrow is our reaction to it, our reaction to what is happening to the world and to us. And the Buddha said the real suffering, most of our suffering comes at that level because of that second arrow. And what I teach you is the way to overcome that, the pain and the shock caused by that second arrow. About the first arrow, I cannot do anything, because that is the very nature of life, of samsara itself. If you are embodied, physical, if you're a physical being, and then you will be subject to physical nature. But huge difference is made in our reaction to it. And we can actually see this in the lives of saints, in the lives of people we consider to be enlightened beings. How there is a huge distinction, a difference in the way they react to old age, they react to sickness, they react to being alone in the world, physical, mental, financial, what kind of problems, how they react and how the rest of us react. And you see the reaction, our reaction is suffering. And the reaction of the enlightened ones, of truly spiritually advanced ones, they show how they have gone beyond suffering. So the difference is here between the enlightened and not enlightened. Enlightened means the ones with spiritual knowledge and the ones without spiritual knowledge. This is the real gift of spirituality. Sri Ramakrishna put it this way, that the three friends who were going, and then they saw this wall, a big wall, and they wanted to know what was on the other side of the wall. And with great difficulty, they climbed over the wall, and one of them, they saw something they saw. And that person danced in delight on top of the wall and then jumped over on the other side. The other two friends were, of course, curious. The second one climbed up, and he too saw something and which made him dance in delight and jump over. The third one thought, what's going on? And then he climbed up and he saw this festivity going on the other side. Wonderful. And he too was about to jump over to the other side. Then he realized, what about the poor people in the village? Who will tell them about this festivity, this mart of joy? So he turned back and he went back to tell people about it. So the spiritual masters who tell us about it, this is the knowledge that they're sharing, that there is a way. There is actually a way of overcoming suffering deeply and profoundly. And finally, not in the worldly sense, which is not final and not certain, not even in the conventionally religious sense. See, the conventionally religious sense, don't knock it. It's a great, great support. Until you are enlightened, until you are spiritually advanced, the conventionally religious sense of taking support from God is a great, great support in spiritual life. Sri Krishna himself clearly says in the Bhagavad Gita, he will say that my devotees are of four types: Artha, Jigyasu, Artharthi, Jnanicha. Artha, the distressed one. So suffering and physically and COVID and whatnot, can they be devotees of God? Krishna says, of course, they are devotees, certainly, and I will take care of them. And then those who are not suffering, but they want something, they have desires in the world, they too become devotees of God. But remember, they are devotees not for the sake of God. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It's the other way around. Ask not what you can do for God, what God can do for you. So God can take care of my suffering, God can give me, fulfill my desires, and God does that to the extent that it will increase your faith in God. It will increase your faith in religion and spirituality. So they are also devotees, but Krishna makes it clear their path to spiritual life is a long drawn process. It will come slowly to spirituality. But the faster ones are the inquirers who are not in suffering, who are not actually here because they want something, but they want to know. And they're inquiring, does God exist? Can I see God? And that is the common, or at least God realization or self realization, whichever way you put it. That is the common search of all spirituality, of all higher religion. Okay, that's the rant. Now we'll get back into the Gita itself. And the Bhagavad Gita is a book par excellence of this kind of spirituality, not of conventional religion as such, or even, and certainly not of worldly means. All right. In the Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, which is on meditation. But before teaching about meditation, Sri Krishna has started anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karoti ya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragni na chakriya. He starts with emphasizing once again karma yoga as a preparation for meditation. So he says that person who without a desire for the results of karma goes on performing his or her duties in the spirit of spiritual practice, as a worship of God, karyam karma, that which is to be done, the person does that. Such a person is a monk, is a sannyasi. Such a person is a yogi. Here, yogi in the sense of a meditator, and sannyasi in the sense of a renouncer. Na niragni na chakriya, not the one who has actually given up activities. Niragni means the sacrificial fire. So activities are of two kinds. One is worldly activities. You have your job, you have your family and all of that, and you have got certain religious activities. Now, a person, a monk who is a renouncer of the activities as such, would give up worldly activities and also the ritualistic religious activities. I remember once I was going to a temple in Gangotri. There's a temple of Ganga. So one priest looked at me and he said, Mahatma ji, aap yahan kya kar rahe hain? What are you doing here, Swami? So meaning thereby that it is meant for ritualistic performances. You have your Vedanta and your meditation. So the second verse, continuing the topic of Karma Yoga. Yam sannyāsam iti prāhur yogaṁ tam viddhi pāṇḍava nahi hyasannyasta-saṅkalpo yogī bhavati kaśhchana. Know that which is extolled as sannyasa to be yoga, O Pandava Arjuna. Verily, no one becomes a yogi without renouncing desire for the fruit of action. That which is called sannyasa, monasticism, becoming a monk, that itself is called yoga or karma yoga. Krishna says that. But it's paradoxical if you think about it. I mentioned this last time. Why is it paradoxical? It's a strange statement to make, because sannyasa literally means giving up. So actually giving up possessions, actually giving up activities, putting on an orange dress and heading off into the mountains. So that is becoming a monk. You don't have relatives or family, you don't have money, possessions, you don't hold a job, you are alone or in a monastic community, and your whole goal is God realization. And you are off, maybe to an ashram, to the forest, or to the mountains, or whatever. On the other hand, The karma yogi is a person who's actually working. So like Arjuna may be engaged in some terrible action like the war itself, or you may be actually holding a job, raising a family, carrying on a business. You have not given up the activities, whether at home or in your profession. So one has given up the activities, one has not given up the activities. How can they be the same? He says that which is monasticism, that itself is karma yoga, Krishna says. So on purpose, it's if you understand that kind of language, it draws your attention. We are like, what did you say just now? Giving up all the actions and not giving up the actions is the same. How is this possible? And the answer he gives in the second line. He says, nahi hyasannyasta-saṅkalpo yogī bhavati kaśhchana. He says, really to be a monk or to be a karma yogi is to give up. See, the word sannyāsa, nyāsa means to give up. Samyak nyāsa, to totally give up, to totally renounce. That's how you derive the word sannyasa. Although there is a positive way of deriving it also, which is sati paramatmani adhare nyasam, adhisthane nyasam. So in sat, in pure being, in paramatman, in brahman, in the ground of the universe, to establish yourself in that. That is also sannyasa. The two positive and negative way of putting it. The negative way of putting it is giving up. Samyak rupe nyasa, to give up everything. All connection, worldly and otherworldly connections. Worldly means this worldly, and otherworldly means trying to attain heaven, giving up all those options. That is sannyasa. The positive interpretation is sati paramatmani, in the adhisthane, to sati means in sat, in pure being. Paramatma means in Brahman. Adhisthana means in the ground of this universe, which is existence itself. To establish yourself in that aham brahmasmi knowledge. That is also sannyasa. But anyway, how can actually giving up activities and not giving up activities be the same thing? Sri Krishna says that there is something common to them. The essence of karma yoga and the essence of sannyasa is the same thing. What is that? He says, sankalpa sannyasa, to give up sankalpas. What is this sankalpas, and why is it the essence of karma yoga and sannyasa? Giving up sankalpa is this. Desire is born of sankalpa. What is sankalpa? Let me just explain a little bit and then we'll see what Krishna means. Sankalpa means samyak kalpana. That means to take up an object and think well of it. This is nice. I want this. This is the way it should be for me. It could be a person, it could be an object, like a gadget or anything desirable in the world, to see the desirability of those things. That is sankalpa. And this sankalpa gives rise to kama, desire. To feel that an object is nice, worth having, worth pursuing, accumulating. You might say, what's wrong with that? Everything is wrong with that. There is no such thing in this world. No form, no sound, rupa, rasa, gandha, sparsha, no touch, no fragrance, no taste, which is not ultimately a source of disappointment. If I want the things in the world, people in the world, activities in the world are going to give me fulfillment, then I am bound to be disappointed. The world is not meant to fulfill our individual desires. You're putting too much of a load of expectations on the world. They are, like Sri Ramakrishna says, a range of zeros. Put them all together, still zero. They cannot fulfill us. And they are associated with, they means objects in the world, whatever you see in the world. They're associated with so many defects, so many problems. They have a beginning and an end. They create addictions. Whatever it is, any kind of pleasure in the world. It could be sense pleasures, it could be the pleasure of having more money or power, whatever it is. It creates addictions. It is like diminishing marginal utility, The more you have of it, the less utility you keep getting from every additional unit of consumption. So every object in the world is subject to these problems. It has these limitations. Dosha drishti. You see the faults in trying to be happy depending on things in the world. And yet we do that. This is the root of desire. We think these things are desirable in the world and I must have them. And then comes kama. From sankalpa comes kama, desire. Many things keep, in sadhus put it nicely in Hindi, pudpudate rehte hain. They keep floating up to the surface of the mind. And some of these things attract our attention. Certain projects, plans to do throughout the day, they keep attracting our attention, and they are endless distractions from spiritual life. And we chase them. We want, they generates kama, desire. And as we pursue kama, we are trapped in samsara. This sankalpa, which gives rise to kama, the yogi, karma yogi has to give up, and sannyasi has to give up. A sannyasi who gives up the world, external world, without giving up the sankalpa is asking for trouble. What will happen? The sannyasi will be trapped. If the sannyasi gives up the world, no money, no job, no people around me. But in the mind, there is this idea, these are nice. It would be nice to have money. It would be nice to have a comfortable house. It would be nice to have people around me. And yet, I have cut off every way of having those things around me. Then you're asking for trouble. The karma yogi also must give up this sankalpa. Because if work is done through sankalpa, it becomes karma bhoga, not karma yoga. It becomes a method. Karma becomes a method of fulfilling our individual discrete desires, like one after another, trying to fulfill a series of desires and trying to get happiness from that. It doesn't work. What does the karma yogi do? What does the sannyasi do? The sannyasi gives up the sankalpas and gives up all activity born of the sankalpa, desire and action. Sankalpa, kama, karma. Sankalpa, kama, karma. First there is sankalpa in the mind, then there is kama, desire, and then there is an action, activity to fulfill it. The sannyasi gives up the whole thing. No sankalpa, no desire, and no action. The karma yogi gives up the essential thing, that is the sankalpa, and the desire born of the sankalpa, but continues with the action. Continues with the action. What action? The action that has to be done in life. As long as the person is in the midst of society, there are people around you, you have some responsibilities, do those, perform those, that work, discharge your responsibilities in the spirit of worship. You are worshipping the Lord through these activities. Whether it's in your job or at home, it becomes a continuous worship of Bhagavan, a continuous worship of the Lord. And it's a wonderful way of living. So Sri Krishna says, karma yogi and the sannyasi, the one who has given up all the activities and the one who continues the activities, they are the same, because at root, if the monk is genuine and the karma yogi is genuine, both have given up the sankalpa. Sankalpa prabhavan kaman. Sankalpa is the root and it gives birth to the desires. Kama means desires. So the root along with the desires, both are given up by the karma yogi and by the sannyasi. In the Mahabharata, there is a verse, Kama janami te moolam, that, oh desire, I have found out your root. Desire is a big bully. He said, oh, really? You have found out my root. What is my root? Pray tell me. Sankalpa is your root. Sankalpa is your root. And na sankalpa ishyami. I shall not generate any more sankalpas. Then you will disappear. So I have found out your root, O desire. It is sankalpa. So the karma yogi gives up sankalpas and the sannyasi also gives up sankalpas. Because both give up sankalpas, they are renouncers. And Krishna says they are the same as far as renunciation is considered. One additional point, Shankaracharya also makes this point, that if you give up sankalpas, you can meditate. Remember, this chapter is on meditation. And also the meaning of the word yogi can be used in two senses. One is karma yogi, which is the primary sense here. And also the dhyana yogi, the meditator. That's the sense in which it is common to talk about yogis. You can meditate better if sankalpas are not there. Sankalpas are the one which disturb meditation. Deep meditation is possible when you've given up the sankalpas. Given up means they may come up in the mind, but you are not pulled along by them. You have made up your mind, I'm not going to chase sankalpas, because I've seen through the sankalpas. They paint a nice, the objects in nice colors, attractive colors, and then I become interested in them, I generate a desire for them, and then I'm engaged in one more project. And that's a distraction from spiritual life. Swami Vivekananda gave the best formula for karma yogis: neither seek nor avoid. He said, neither seek nor avoid. Nahi hyasannyasta-saṅkalpo yogī bhavati kaśhchana. So without totally giving up sankalpas, nobody can become a karma yogi. And of course, nobody can become a sannyasi. Even kaśhchana means whosoever it is. Suppose somebody has actually formally taken the vows of sannyasa and not given up sankalpas. And if you do not give up sankalpas, the desires are inevitable, because desires are born of sankalpas. So whoever it is, that person cannot be a yogi, cannot be a karma yogi, cannot be a sannyasi, cannot be a meditated yogi either. Then, before we go on to the next one, let me just quickly see the activity chat. Yes, people are saying that it's important that we discuss this, the question of suffering. Patrick asks, is there any record of practices that accompany Sankhya along with the philosophy? Now, that's an interesting question. Normally, the answer would be yes. The Patanjali Yoga was a natural companion for Sankhya. So, Sankhya philosophy and Patanjali Yoga philosophy are the same, Prakriti Purusha. And Patanjali Yoga is a whole technology of spiritual practices. But even so, I think Sankhya philosophers would insist that just the Sankhya insight, that is what is to be aimed at, and it's a philosophical inquiry. If you want to meditate upon it and have samadhi, is very good, but at the core, it is this philosophical insight. I think the Sankhya philosophers would insist on that. What is this philosophical insight? It's the first step in Advaita Vedanta. We always talk about it. And not the body, not the mind. I am the witness consciousness. In fact, this Sunday also, I'll be harping on the same theme. I'm not the body, not the mind. I am this witness consciousness. That is the Sankhyan insight. Advaita comes next. But Sankhyan insight is, I am witness consciousness, I am Sakshi. I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the consciousness reflected in the body-mind, Chidabhasa. Not even that. This Sankhyan insight is absolutely fundamental. I asked a great scholar once, very great scholar of Sankhya and Vedanta and Nyaya, in Calcutta. He was a Pandit, 94, 95 years old. I said, what is the difference between Sankhya and Advaita? And he was hard of hearing, so I had to yell the question into his ear. I said, what's the difference between Advaita and Sankhya? And he just answered in a phrase. He said, Drishtir Parthakya, a difference in point of view. He just said, it's just a difference in point of view. Then Bill, Kapila's teachings are given in the Bhagavatam. I guess that is later. Yes, that's later. Prabir Basu says, Prarabdha Samarpitam. That is from the Manisha Panchakam of Adi Shankaracharya. Shweta Singh says, the pain can be a separation from God and it's equally a suffering. No, it's not equally a suffering. Not at all. The separation from God, that is called viraha. For example, like the gopis experience the separation from God. That is greater than even the greatest pleasures of the world. It is felt as a pain. I think it was Tulsidas who said, even a single drop, a teardrop shed because you feel the absence of God. That is more pleasurable than all the pleasures of the world. It's profoundly satisfying. It takes you beyond bhavasagar, beyond the ocean of transmigration. You're blessed if you can cry for God. If you cry once for God, you are safe. Now then God will take care of you. Then Rick says, so what I mean is that the pain of separation from God is a pain that should be cultivated. Viraha. It's not a pain that you would want to give up, and by no means. Rick says, is it that he doesn't desire the results of actions, or rather that he desires them, which is why he's performing the action, but he doesn't depend upon them because he's fulfilled whether or not the desired results occur? So that's not desiring. That is not desiring. If you perform actions, the results are going to come anyway. That's if Arjuna fights the war, there's going to be a result. You're going to either win it or lose it or whatever. But then my goal is no longer the result itself. My goal is that I am doing what has to be done, and I'm doing it in a spirit of worship. I'm worshipping the Lord through my actions. It frees you. It frees you for a lot of the ups and downs of life. How do you react to the world after this, from this perspective? One monk, he put it so nicely. He said, the karmi, the person who's engaged in the world, who acts through sankalpas, is at the mercy of what happens in the world. It's at the mercy of what the world does to him or her. So the reaction to the world is always, what? And the karma yogi's reaction to the world is, so what? So this is the difference. The karma, your reaction to the world is always, what? And the karma yogi's reaction is, so what? This is a huge difference, and it's really worth making the transition. Because if I'm performing karma and I've got specific desires, I want it to be this way and I do not want it to be that way. I'll be happy if it happens this way. I'll be really unhappy and aggravated if it doesn't happen, if it happens the other way. Then I'm at the mercy of the world. But the karma yogi is not at the mercy of the world. Whatever the ultimate result of my activities, I am doing it as a worship of the Lord. And I am getting the result of it, which is purity of mind, preparation for the higher spirituality of Vedanta or meditation or whatever. I was just reading, this is something that was recorded by Swami Chaitanyananda. Swami Shivananda was the president of our order at that time in the 1920s in Belur Math. So he told one monk to work, to be engaged in work. And the monk rather grandly replied, God realization is the goal of human life, not work. And Swami Shivananda was very annoyed. He said, Swami Vivekananda has himself said, by doing work for Sri Ramakrishna, you will attain Chitta Shuddhi and your moksha, your mukti is guaranteed. Do you think Swami Vivekananda was a fraud? So work, that is karma yoga, the work that you do for the Lord, that has no downside to it. There's no downside to it. In the Bible also, Jesus Christ says, come unto me, ye that are heavily laden. So you are burdened by the world and the worldly cares. Come to me, I'll relieve you of that burden. But then he says, I will yoke you too. I will put a burden on you, but my yoke is light. It is deeply fulfilling and transformative and helpful in our lives, and does no harm to us at all. It always elevates us. What? Work done as worship. Then Krishnamurti says, Krishnamurti Vishwanathan, unfortunately, many sincere and lifelong followers of conventional religion do not know that there is a final solution possible through spirit. It is true. They do not know. Is it okay to tell our loved ones that the higher solution, or should we just hope they will discover it when they're ready? It's a difficult one. You can tell, but like missionizing it, preaching it, doesn't help too much. I've seen so many people who, in their initial enthusiasm for Vedanta, go around telling others, and then the reaction is, nobody's interested. Yes, nobody is interested. It's good for people to know that such a thing is available, such a thing is there, but more important for their own samskaras. That's why the traditional teaching of Vedanta was you will go and seek out Vedanta. You seek out Vedanta, you seek out the teacher and the text. It's your inquiry. We are not going to come to your house with pamphlets. So, uh, the higher spirituality, we must want it. We have to be ready for it. I remember this tragic incident which happened years ago. A young boy died. He was a college student from one of our institutions. He died at home in an accident. His parents had come, they were weeping, and the monk was consoling the parents. And I was talking to one of the relatives, and I was giving my usual Vedanta talk, ultimately that we are consciousness itself, this body, mind, and the relationships, who is whose husband, who is whose wife, child. And then another monk caught hold of me and said, "What are you doing? You, they have lost a child. You are making them lose everything." So they want to know that the child is safe and we are going to go to heaven and be reunited with our loved ones, and that's it. I'm pure consciousness and there is no father, mother, husband, wife, child, and we are forever beyond suffering. You're taking everything away from them. They've just lost one child. So they want everything to to be as it is. That's why I said that a large number of people who are interested in religion at this moment may not be particularly interested once things become more comfortable, um, because that's what they want, that things be a little more comfortable. It's terrible now, let it get easier. That it's a long drawn process. And I don't know if that answers your question. It's good to say it, but you will see most people will not pay attention until they're ready to pay attention. But it's good to say it because then they know that such a thing is there. Those books are in the house. We saw people in our own family or in the neighborhood who were deeply spiritual. In fact, Swami Sarvapriyananda ji, about whom I was reading in Swami Chaitanandaji's recollections, he used to say the best advertisement for spirituality is a spiritual life. By seeing your peace of mind, your holiness, your that you are deeply, deeply happy and peaceful and calm, and that pulls people, that attracts people. Can I be like that? It's like I call it a holy jealousy. I remember seeing Swami Bhuteshanandaji, who was the 12th president of our order. I was a young novice, and I would see this 98-year-old monk, and sometimes my reaction would be, I want what you have. There is something that you have that is precious beyond everything in this universe. That if I could give up everything and get that, then it would still be a bargain. So that is the best advertisement. Anuradha says, what about the sankalpa we do before puja? Yes. So notice the sankalpa that we do before puja in ashrams, in our Ramakrishna order, it is sankalpa for Sri Ramakrishna Priti Artham, for the blessings and the pleasure of the Lord. We are not doing it for specific worldly gains. So there are rituals most rituals are performed for specific worldly or otherworldly gains. If you are a spiritual seeker, you will perform the same ritual, the puja, without asking for any this worldly or otherworldly gains. Sangeeta is asking, Shweta is asking, is there this inclination to be absorbed in long silent retreats? Is it also sankalpa? Well, these are good ones. These are ones which give up sankalpas, which cut down sankalpas. So don't force yourself, but whatever, suppose the mind is now, there's a desire to withdraw and be calm and quiet and centered for some time, definitely do it. All these are good desires which come up in the mind, which take me Godward. Sangeeta says, a lot of gurus, even sannyasi gurus, are known to make or take up sankalpa for others, especially in times of sankalpa, means in times of distress. Yes, especially in times of suffering. Yes, one can do that if it's for the welfare of others. It's not a selfish desire. Often pujas are performed for the welfare of the community. So the sankalpa is taken for the welfare of everybody. That's all right. Kiran says, does nishkama karma lead to any results? Well, the most important result is chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind. It is foundational for God realization. Are we supposed to dedicate the results to God in karma yoga? Yes, all the time. Rodrigo says, I heard that the recitation of the Pavamana Bhyaroha amounts to meditation. I don't know which one you are talking about, but traditionally, in the Vedic culture, this Swadhyaya, which today we translate as study, but that the original meaning was Vedic recitation. So that is a kind of verbal practice. So the spiritual practices can be physical rituals, maybe there. They could be verbal practices and mental practices. So verbal practices are above the physical, like offering ghee or something into the fire. So higher than that is the chanting with the faculty of speech, and higher than that is meditation. But yes, chanting can lead to absorption and meditation. Tibetan Buddhists, for example, they do a lot of chanting. All right, let me stop here. Tomorrow, I must not forget. Oh, Dimitri, you had a question. You have a raised hand.
Yes, thank you, Swamiji. I wanted to ask a practical question on the renunciation, how to journey from the mind to the heart. Because I see that, yes, I can make my mind, but then my heart is still not together with my mind.
Right.
And like I was trying to see, like, it doesn't seem like if I try to resist myself, it doesn't really work. Like the only successful thing that I found so far is that if I'm lucky to remember the definition of what is what when the desire comes, all I can do is just to observe it.
Yes.
And see it for what it is. But then it continues to act.
You are right. This is an important insight, especially in the path of knowledge at the beginning. Knowledge acts at the level of the mind or the intellect. Desire acts at the level of the heart. And that's why the two do not often go together, at least at the beginning. So I may understand something, and I may want, my heart may pull at a different level altogether. So that is why in the path of jnana, in the path of knowledge, bhakti is important, because bhakti starts working at the level of the heart. One powerful way of bringing desires under control is to see the paltriness of worldly desires, that it has never satisfied me till now. It has always disappointed me till now. And the deeply profound satisfaction that comes from devotion to God, bhakti. So bhakti acts at the level of the heart. It pulls you, connects you with God. The same desires which were scattered in the world in 100 different channels, it's the same force. You collect it and you direct it towards the Lord, towards God, at the level of emotion and desire. And that will be in accordance with jnana, with knowledge. Otherwise, jnana and worldly desires will keep pulling in different directions. Alpana?
Just a quick one, Swamiji. You mentioned you'll be talking about some topic on Sunday. Will it be available to attend online?
Yes. It will be live streamed as usual, the Sunday talks. So there is this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad mantra, which was Swami Bhuteshanji's favorite. So I want to give a talk, and then I saw that there's so much material on that. Vidyaranya in Panchadashi has written the largest chapter in Panchadashi, nearly 300 verses on that one verse from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And so I'll give maybe 4 talks or 5 talks about it.
So this will be 11 a.m.
Yes, Eastern time.
Got it. Thank you.
Each Sunday, this Sunday and then the next 3 Sundays consecutively. Tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we have a talk by Swami Yogatmanandaji in our monthly webinars, the guest lectures. I think you may have already got the email. You have got the email. Okay, I see a lot of people nodding their heads. All right. Are the links to the Sunday talks on the website? Yes, they are. Good. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.